Hello everybody. So it's been about a month since I've addressed HIMS on the channel. The last video, the stock was trading at about 16 and is now trading at $24-ish, granted a little less today, 23.50. So the stock is up, HIMS is up 181% in 1 year, and I've been covering it for more than a year now. If you follow the channel, you know that I've consistently found this stock to be super cheap, and the main goal of this video is to answer, do I still find HIMS cheap? That's the goal of the video. I'm keeping my stock. I bought some lips on HIMS in early May 2024. If you remember some of the backlash that there was on the stock was trading at 11-ish dollars back in early May. But some lips, I will exercise those lips. I won't sell them. I'll exercise them. I want to accumulate more of this stock, and I'm not selling this stock. But the question is it still cheap right now? And you'll see that the answer is quite surprising, because to me the answer in a nutshell is yes, the stock is still cheap. And how do I say that? Why do I call this stock cheap? Well, I could compare this stock to, say, a SaaS company. Like I could compare this to a CrowdStrike. That would be a little unfair, but a CrowdStrike, for example, I mean, the last time I looked was 24 times sales, trading at 24 times sales. If you look at HIMS, it's trading at 5 times sales, which for a business for this type of gross margin and this type of revenue growth is still pretty darn cheap. And so if you look at the metrics, it's a 0.15, so granted, the stock is well over 100% more expensive than the spreadsheets that I used to make just 6 months ago on this stock. So it's doubled, right? It's doubled in value, but it's still in my top tier cheapest stock in the video. And actually, every single stock that I could think of, that I could compare HIMS to, right? These stocks are comparable in some way to HIMS. Every single stock is more expensive aside from Oddity, but Oddity is really roughly about the same, and it's all a matter of what you think the revenue growth is going to be. If HIMS's revenue growth is only 43% over the next 12 months, that's kind of a sandbagged revenue growth. You can see HIMS achieves handsomely a rule of 40 with a 48. Actually, if you take their own EBITDA margin number in their last annual report, which was 9%, you'd get up above a rule of 50. Oddity as well, rule of 54, Lilly, rule of 60. So these are all very profitable company, very profitable space. So who should I compare HIMS to? Well, I could compare HIMS to Oddity Tech. If I compare it to Oddity Tech, the valuation is about the same. Oddity Tech is a business that sells foundation, i.e. makeup, and it's a similar method to promote a product, and it's a very sticky product. People are coming back. They use social media a lot. Very similar. So trading in line, say, if I compare it to an Oddity. What about a Teladoc? Well, what is Teladoc? Teladoc is the fallen hero of 2020. This has been a very, very painful stock to own if you've owned it, right? It's under $10 now. It's pretty insane. And why is Teladoc not doing too well? Because revenue growth is 5%. It's predicted to grow at the rate of the economy. And why do they grow so slow? Well, that's been my thesis since the beginning, comparing HIMS to Teladoc, is they grow so slow because they are working directly with America's leading health insurance. And they work with health providers and health insurance and hospitals. And because they work with them, because they have that relationship, they have to move at the speed of a bloated legacy system, whether it is legacy healthcare, the big state system, big hospital systems, each major city in the US has one of these big health systems with 3 last names, moves very slow. And then if you use another insurance with a bunch of last names next to it, it moves even slower, and add on top of that a different insurance for pharmacy that's even slower. I think the reason why Teladoc is growing so slow is because Teladoc is working fully with insurance. And then you have Eli Lilly, which is another company I could compare HIMS to. And if you compare HIMS to Eli Lilly, then HIMS looks dirt cheap. Clearly, someone, in my view, who is looking to benefit from the weight loss revolution that we're in, the weight loss craze, if you're looking to benefit from that, clearly HIMS is the much better valuation. And granted, the recent increase in valuation for HIMS surely much of it has to do with this weight loss revolution and the expectation that they're going to sell a lot of weight loss products. I much prefer having my exposure to this space through HIMS than through Eli Lilly. But Eli Lilly, of course, is the maker of Ozempic, and the valuation, if you ask me, is quite nosebleed. If you ask me, the market is really telling us with that valuation, kind of Nvidia-like valuation. The market is really telling us that these GLP-1 agonists, these GLP-1 drugs, are a revolution as big as AI, or maybe not quite, but closer to AI. They're a big revolution in the space. And so that's what the market's telling. Obesity, clearly a problem worldwide, right? Not just in the US, but also in Europe. Also, I was looking at number India. India has huge problems with obesity. It's a problem worldwide. And so that seems to be a really revolution. And of course, you can compare, right? High market cap stocks like Eli Lilly, they're going to be more stable, lower volatility. They're going to trade higher. They're going to be in the indices. But this is why the returns sometimes are lesser for this type of stocks, right? HIMS still has a lot of things to look forward to, like getting into the indices at some point. As the market cap increases, it will be added to different indices, etc. Okay, so answering the question, is HIMS still cheap? Well, I think it is, because if you look, first of all, so trading, like I said, only 5 times sales. The business is going to grow between 40 and 50% based on management's discussion of all of this, for the next few years at least. Is it 3 more years? Is it 5 more years? I don't know, but they're going to sustain that for the next few years. They've already beat their guidance by 1 year. The guidance they had given us in 2023, they've already beat that guidance. Most of the products that they sell, their medication that they prescribe, 90+% of them are going to be a recurring revenue. They're recurring revenue. The way medicine works in many cases is you take a drug, and that drug is what kind of sort of cures you or makes you feel better. We live in a pharmaceutically driven medicine, at least in the West. That's like the leading way to treat. That's the leading way doctors treat, is by prescribing long-term medicine. And as a result of that, when you see your doctor visit with HIMS, online doctor visit, you get a prescription. If it works, you stay on it, and you're going to stay on it for a very long time, because these medications are personal and they're highly essential, right? If you've started losing weight and you keep the weight down because you have a HIMS subscription, you're going to keep that HIMS subscription because you want to keep your weight down, or you want to get your health under control, or your ED under control. And my view is that most folks are going to care much more about their health and paying their health subscription rather than, say, their Netflix subscription. That's stickier on a Netflix subscription or Costco subscription, in my view, because once you get a drug, if you have anxiety, if you have ED, if you have hair loss, if you have all of the ailments that HIMS, minor issues that HIMS treats, you're going to want to stick to it, even in a recession, which is also part of the reason why I was attracted to HIMS in the early days, was the recession. They should just ride the GLP-1 wave, right? They've launched their compounded semaglutide, and they have a roadmap. If you look at their roadmap, if you look at this, they still have a lot of things coming up in the roadmap, right? The big one that I'm looking at next is obviously diabetes. Diabetes is going to be enormous when they release something for diabetes. But there's a bunch of stuff they haven't gotten into. For example, in sexual health, they haven't gotten into testosterone treatment. If you know anything about living in the U.S., you drive around the highway, you see a giant billboard for some men's center that says low T. It's like a huge thing here in the U.S. And so if they launch that, what if they launch a treatment for low testosterone, that could be tremendous, right? 80 million plus people could get it. Eczema, rosacea, these are all things we've heard of, very common, right? PTSD. This has been in the conversation in the United States for decades, right? These are all things that they could add to their business, that they will add to their business. It is part of the roadmap. 90% of people seeking treatment can be treated through pharmaceuticals prescribed online. So that business has a potential to be much larger. And they are building a consumer brand. What is a consumer brand? A consumer brand, a 21st century consumer brand, is a brand where you try to make the customer happy. You try to make the customer feel good. How do you make the customer happy? How do you make him or her feel good? Well, what you do, first of all, is you have clear pricing, That's what HIMS does. It's very, 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 very clear. Then you see the customer really quickly, right? You don't say, oh, we only have an appointment available 3 months from now. No, you're like guaranteed within 48 hours, you're going to see someone. That's the Amazon culture. You want things to be quick, right? And you want to make the customer feel good. HIMS, in a way, as a large segment of it, as a marketing company, marketing in a space that has never had marketing, right? In a space, healthcare was largely relied on the last names of men from the 1900s, right? Look at any health system, any big US city I've lived in. It's just a bunch of last names put together from the 1900s. That's not marketing. Marketing is making the consumer feel great, making people happy. It's working toward that net promoter score, right? You want to have a very high net promoter score where most people recommend your product because they feel great about it. And I've shown this in my prior videos, but this is the example. Let's imagine someone has ED. One could be taking these scary drug with these scary names on it, or you could just take mints, hard mints, the HIMS hard mints. It's a product that's very successful from them. Which of them is customer friendly? Which of them is least scary? That's obviously the HIMS one, and they do that, of course, for every single subscription that they have. They try to make them accessible. They try to treat the customer like a king. That's what they do. Even then, this is easy to understand, easy to see, really a modern 21st century approach to care, right? You don't have to type some code in your insurance and know the code, and if you don't know the code, you don't know the pricing, and you get a bill in the mail later on. You don't have to do any of that. Anyways, let me move back to the stock itself. Zooming out. So the trailing 12 months revenue for HIMS. You can see they only had 148 million trading 12 months at the end of 2020, and now 960 million trailing 12 months. So over roughly 3.5 years, the revenue is up 548%. But the stock, and I've overlaid them roughly. This is roughly an overlayment. This is more like this, but you get it. So roughly the same overlayment over the same period is plus 59%. So the stock was up 59% over 3.5 years, roughly, but the revenues were up 548%. So to me, assuming a price to sales is constant over the long run, the stock should closely track the revenue growth. This is a stock that has not tracked its revenue growth at all. So the stock hasn't kept up with the underlying business performance. At the way I look at it, if you had bought it at all-time high, and back in early 21, right? You remember February 2021, people were very hopeful. Interest rates were going to stay at zero, so that's when the stock really hit its all-time high. You just exceeded that all-time high again, but the revenue itself, almost 6x'd, right? So the revenue itself was absolutely outstanding. So what that means is that business was unjustly put into the SPAC bucket. SPAC bad. That's the level of thinking in the market, and so that's why this business was trading at $3 while the sales kept growing, and that's our opportunity as retail investors. Not to mention, this is not just a revenue growth story. HIMS is now profitable. They're EBITDA profitable, of course, but they're also GAAP profitable. They make money. They pay taxes. I don't like that. I'd rather see them lose a little money so that they don't pay taxes, but they're profitable. The market, in theory, should like that. Well, it's showing up in the stock price right now for this one. We'll see how long that lasts. And one of the fears, and I've seen some articles in the media over the past week or two trying to put this fear back. If you remember this stock, if you've been following this stock when it was trading at the 6, the 7, the 8s, if you were buying it at this level, you knew the big reason why the stock was down is everyone was saying, oh, they're spending so much money on marketing and then the customers are canceling out. These conversations that I've had for a year and a half, that I don't want to go on with, are largely not true. The marketing spend is largely it takes you. Their goal is 6 months, so you spend about 6 months of money that you're going to get from the subscription. That's about the cost. So you have a break even on marketing spend of about 6 months, right? Maybe a year in some cases. But again, if you, it makes sense to, let's say you have a $50 a month subscription. It makes sense for you to spend $600 to acquire of advertising, right? $600 of marketing and ad to acquire a $50 a month subscription at an 83% gross margin. If that person's gonna stay with you 10 years, that makes an absolute sense to spend 1 year worth of potential money made. You spend it in year one, and then you earn it over a very, very long run. These are not one-time purchases. These are long-lasting, sticky purchases. And if you listen to the call, remember 3 calls ago, Yemi said in the conference call, he said we still have plenty of the original HIMS subscriber. When the company was launched 6 years ago, they still have plenty of them who get those original ED drugs, who are still on them, and that's the first cohort. So it's almost like a bank, right? It's almost like banking. It's very sticky. Each cohort is sticky, and then you get that exponential growth by doing cross-selling, and that's the next stage of wave for HIMS. Once they have more customers, right? When they get into the 3, the 4, the 5 million customers, the next step will be to see if there's any cross-selling opportunities, which there obviously are, because health is related and you rarely have one issue. You often have multiple issues that need addressed. And so this stock, in my view, has not kept up with the revenue growth. The stock price has not kept up with the revenue growth. And let me do one last zoom out, but this time the big picture. I'll finish with a big picture. So what are some of the tailwinds, right? Some of the tailwinds is, again, it's the Amazon effect. People want to be treated for cheap. They want it cheap, they want it now, and they don't want to leave the house. Cheap now, don't leave the house. This is the standard that many customers, especially younger customers, people in their 30s, their 40s, have come to, and I'm not even talking about people in their 20s, that's to them, that's so obvious, but that's what most people have come to expect, right? That's the Amazon effect. Amazon has taught the West that, the world of the West that. And so, because of that Amazon effect, do we really need 45,000 physical pharmacies in the United States? No, we don't. We need a few automated warehouses, and HIMS has 2 of those, right? Then, navigating the legacy insurance system. I've made that point multiple times in the video, but most folks are not going to want to go through figuring out, selecting a provider, selecting your main doctor, and then maybe getting transferred to a specialist and waiting months between each appointment. Most folks are going to do that for a big problem, but they're not going to do that for a small problem. And right now, HIMS is not focusing on big problems. They're focusing on small problems. You got a little hair loss because you're 35 and I don't know, it's genetic. It runs in your family. That's not a big problem. That's not something you're going to, most people, at least, are not going to go through the hoops of that. And people are just not going to do that. Just navigating this insurance system the hurdle is high, and it is done in such a way that you do it for the big stuff. You don't do it for the small stuff. That is my take on it. Maybe I'm wrong. Then, in today's instant gratification, people don't want to wait. They don't want to wait to see a provider. They can do this right away with HIMS. And even if it's reimbursed, oftentimes they don't want to wait, right? Time is money. Also, and this is a point I've made multiple times in the video, many insurance companies have become bloated. They've become so big. They've become machines of administrative machines, same for hospitals, that really they've started introducing things like copays and things like unclear reimbursement grids and unclear things. If you've ever been to a doctor and tried to ask beforehand how much it's going to cost to get that treatment or to that doctor visit is going to cost, it's not a clear pricing. That's the old way to price the thing. And because of that, well, HIMS oftentimes is cheaper. Which is mind-boggling to me. And lastly, a big tailwind, aside from everything else I've said and mentioned, about future treatments like diabetes, PTSD, rosacea, etc., testosterone. There's also the GLP-1, which is the right now topic, right? The right now topic of this stock. This stock has almost, the recent run has made this stock a GLP-1 stock. The question is GLP-1s a top 10 revolution in this decade? And that might actually warrant a separate video of its own. And I've listened to a lot of podcasts on this topic, and a consensus seems to be forming that these drugs are really miraculous. That's kind of the consensus that I'm getting from watching all of his different podcasts and all of his different videos. Not to say it's like fluoride or statins. If you've been following the health space, these were big in their own day. But not to say this is that. But maybe we are still in this gray area. But this, if GLP-1s are one of the big top 10 revolutions of this decade, then in my view, this stock will likely greatly benefit. And what are some of the headwinds? Well, competition, but let's face it, whenever you deal and you talk about an innovative company of any kind, that's the first thing people who don't like your stock or don't like your pick, they'll say, oh, the competition is here, the competition is coming, and they'll assume that the competition is bad. Now, in my view, the competition is never bad. The competition validates that there's money to be made. It validates that there's money to be made in that idea. And I really don't think the competition is bad if you start thinking about that we don't live in a zero-sum world, we live in a positive-sum world, right? That's the whole idea of you go find a product to a physical store and they're, I don't have it, but my neighbor has it. Why don't you go check the store across the street? They may have it, right? Competition is not necessarily always bad if you have a positive-sum attitude. Competition is bad if you try to use a patent to overcharge people, or if you start, or if you try to use your network to upcharge people, right? To rent seek. If you're going to rent seek, which is the way most businesses have done business up until now, 20th century type business, when people were rent seeking, if you're going to rent seek, you don't want competition because you want to earn your extra economic rent. You want to upcharge. You want to charge more. But otherwise, I don't think this is a big, serious competition. There's room for a lot of players. There's room for a lot of players, and HIMS seems to be the number one player in that spot. And then the other headwind is regulation. And that again, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think there's a few valid points for some treatments that they offer, but if you had regulation, that wouldn't be an across the board regulation. It would be for some treatments. But it's true, that the medical boards are very strong, and they may push for some regulations and say, hey, well, maybe you can't prescribe this or that, but would it be across the board, right? Or would it be for just a few things? That's point number one. And then point number two is, don't forget, like this moves at the speed of government, and the speed of government is not the speed of a companies like HIMS. So if people were even talking about regulating telehealth much more strongly today, how many years would that take to do, right? Well, guess what? The stock would probably be way, way, way up before that even happens. So I view these are low threats in my view for the moment. The tailwinds, in my view, are much bigger for this stock. I'm happy to have this stock. I own this stock. I'm not buying more right now because I'm focusing on other opportunities. But I will exercise my options, and I'll buy the stocks in my options when they come due, perhaps even earlier. We'll see. But I have a bunch of $12 leaps, and obviously that's a good thing to exercise. So, anyways, thank you so much for watching. Still very busy right now. I'm selling my house. It's a tough, busy time right now. I can't make many videos as much as I used to, but I'll come back strong after the summer with my daily video. I will definitely be coming back strong and professionalizing the whole thing. Very grateful for all of you following me. Thank you so much for watching. This was not investment advice, not financial advice, just entertainment. Please like, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day.